When I arrived in 2007, the war was very much intensifying. It was on an upward slope of violence and killing throughout the country, certainly in the eastern parts of the country and the northern parts. There were suicide bombs going off throughout Colombo and in other parts of the country. It was a very unstable and unsafe environment. Our priorities for UNDP at that point were really to help, most of our funding at that point was directed towards helping the conflict-affected communities, helping them with early recovery support, humanitarian plus kind of support, helping them basically grow enough food to have some basic livelihoods to stay alive. At that point, it was just around the time when the LTT in the eastern province was falling, so there was a lot of instability, particularly in the eastern province, Batticaloa, Trincomalee, and Ampara. A lot of IDPs. We were very active there. One of my other priorities personally was to look into the safety and security of our staff because they were operating in very insecure environments, very close to the areas of conflict. So I remember a few occasions when we were directly exposed to shelling and gunfire. So the times have changed a lot. It's definitely a different time now, and it's a great pleasure for me to look back over these years to see this significant progress in the operating environment. Well, the first step towards making a difference is really understanding the situation. So my first few years here really were spent quite often in the field, learning directly from the communities what their situation was, what they were asking of the UN, and thereafter working with our teams. You know, we have field offices throughout the north and the east. Those offices are central to our relationship with the conflict-affected communities. And also there are many other UN agencies. So one of the, I'll call it an achievement, that I was able to support was an interagency initiative called the Recovery Coordination Initiative, RCI, which brought together 5 different agencies, each agency doing one thing that it did better than any of the other agencies. So UNDP supported livelihoods, UNICEF worked on the schools, UNHCR provided information on the beneficiaries, WFP provided the initial food aid to get the program rolling, ILO provided vocational training. And the idea was that by bringing all 5 agencies together, each doing one thing only that it did better than any other agency, we could get more bang for the buck, so to speak. And it's an initiative that ended up attracting a lot of support. Other agencies ultimately, including UNDP, added more project support, and we made a big difference. It was a great initiative. I think that the main change can be described in 2 ways. First, it was moving from an approach where we were doing things and building things and providing things directly to the beneficiaries, more towards what we're still aiming to do. We're in the process, but we're getting there, where we are bringing partners together and focusing our resources, our finances, our staff time, more in terms of bringing the private sector companies in Sri Lanka in direct partnership with the conflict-affected communities, most of whom are farmers, who could provide their goods and services over the long term. And in my view, that's a much more sustainable model than UNDP building community centers or building an irrigation channel. So I think that's one big change that we've taken, and we continue to evolve. The other big area is moving away from what I would call downstream support. Again, providing direct livelihoods, building warehouses and storage facilities, to moving more upstream, and that means providing more policy support in partnership with the government, seeing where those entry points are, where UNDP can make a difference based on its experience in other parts of the world, in terms of good governance, environmental sustainability. Certainly looking ahead, our environmental portfolio and our very close relationship with the national government will be the will bring in the lion's share of our resources, and I think in about 5 years will probably be the dominant part of our portfolio. And that's a big difference from 5 years ago when I arrived, where it was the post-conflict portfolio and the livelihoods work that was the biggest part of our support package. I think the challenges can be broken down into 3 areas, and the first one is programmatic. What does UNDP do? And I think the biggest challenge has been to not only react to the transition from crisis to peace and development, but actually to be a part of that and to steer it. And I think part of that has required that our own teams, the UN system generally in Sri Lanka, really embrace longer-term planning, longer-term development processes, gauging more what the communities not only need to survive, but what they want to do with their lives. To measure your calorie intake is one thing, but to measure what you want to do with your life is a very different endeavor, and a much more challenging one in certain respects. I'm not saying more important, but certainly different. So that's been a big challenge for us in the last few years, how to make sure that we as UNDP are the vanguard of that process of change in support of the government, but certainly within the UN system, supporting that different way of thinking, which goes from very short-term survival approach to longer-term development. The second big challenge for me has been on the management front. And we've gone through very difficult times as a team. Morale was sometimes under attack because we were literally under attack in some places. It's difficult to maintain focus when there are a lot of issues that are transpiring in the country that give reason for people to be worried about their lives and their future and their country. But certainly in the past few years since the war has ended, it's been a different management challenge, and that's been it's been a challenge about mobilizing this team in this new direction that we as UNDP need to take, and that means persuading, inspiring people to think more long-term. And that is UNDP's bread and butter, but it's not the type of approach that we here in Sri Lanka have taken reflexively over the past, for many years during the crisis. The last challenge is very specific. I think the biggest one was when our office was taken hostage a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, when one of the government ministers led an angry mob, surrounded our compound, and that was quite unnerving, interesting. No one got hurt. I'm very happy about that. But it was about one spark away from a major clash, and to be right in the middle of that, I was the most senior official on the compound on that particular occasion. So it was a great learning experience for me also to be to learn about myself, that those situations were something that I could handle. Oh, that's an easy question. UNDP, to do your job well at UNDP, you have one basic goal as a senior manager. That is to know that country like the back of your hand, to the point where you can make useful policy recommendations on how to support the country in development. To be in a country, as I have for almost 5 years now, to have had to have experienced this learning process about a fascinating culture and people is a privilege. It's a fantastic privilege. We're not flown in here for 3 months or 6 months or even a year-long assignment. We're here for a period that allows us to learn, and not just to talk or give interviews, but to learn. And for one's personal growth, and even for one's family. I mean, my family's gotten a lot out of this experience. My children, to experience this in a way that's family friendly, where we're not bouncing around the world every year or 6 months, is again a great privilege, and I'll always treasure that aspect of UNDP. It's not only my favorite place in Sri Lanka, but it's my favorite place in the world. That's how I often describe it. And that's the rooftop terrace that I have, that I've at my home here in Sri Lanka for the last 5 years. It's a beautiful rooftop that's, where a giant tree is overlooking it, and we had all our meals there, and most of my weekends, whenever I had free time, was just sitting up there, enjoying the silence. Well, there wasn't much silence, because it was all the birds singing and the sounds of the jungle, because that's basically where it was. Extraordinary place. I don't think I'll ever have a place like that to call my home. So the last, 3 months that I knew my days were numbered, my family and I were enjoying every minute up there, saying, this is, it's coming to an end, it's coming to an end. But I'll always treasure those moments there. Well, I'm going back to New York, the Big Apple, back to UN headquarters. I'm from New York, so culturally, can't say it'll be that interesting for me. Certainly not as interesting as Sri Lanka. But I will be starting an assignment with one of my great mentors and favorite people in the UN system, Amira Haq, a Bangladeshi woman who's just been designated the head of one of the peacekeeping departments at the UN. So I'll be working closely with her. I will be loaned from UNDP for 3 years. Okay, I've agreed to be in New York for 3 years, and then I'll be back in the field with UNDP. But it'll be an interesting learning experience, again, to see how the UN works and how it's able to change in how it does peacekeeping. And that will be my job, to see how this department can bring about changes in how peacekeeping missions are planned and deployed. Question I think I'm asked every other day, and I don't know if I'll be back too soon, but I'll certainly be back as a tourist. I'll be very interested to see how Sri Lanka develops, and I think it has a great opportunity now with peace and sustainable peace, because I don't see the war coming back in any form for a very long time. I think with a bit of luck and with good governance, I think that will be the pivot to a truly sustainable development track for Sri Lanka and all Sri Lankans. Well, I think the major sentiments that I want to share with the staff I already have in the big staff meeting that we had yesterday. But I would like to reiterate my words of thanks to all of them for being so supportive and being a great team for the past 5 years. We really managed to do some extraordinary things here. And I think that leads me to the one word of advice that I would like to share with everyone here, and that is we're stronger together. And I think working together as a team, helping each other, backing each other up, empathy and compassion as a way of doing business is very important. And I think with all the fragmentation and the individualism that's just on the threshold and that too often is part and parcel of economic growth, I think it's very important that our team here continue the processes of change and improvement that we've been engaged in for the past 5 years, and continues to be committed to making a difference in this wonderful country together. I think the important word is we need to do this together, and I think only with that in mind will UNDP continue to make a difference.